Right now, I do want to get into some of the other big headlines that we are covering, and of course, the latest on Operation Epic Fury, as Iranian state TV is now claiming today that a U.S. pilot was ejected from an aircraft over southwestern Iran. The broadcaster went on to say, quote, "If you capture the enemy pilot or pilots alive and hand them over to the police, you will receive a precious prize," end quote. Now, there's been no word from the White House, the Pentagon, or U.S. Central Command as to the validity of that claim, but you can see this right here coming in from the New York Post as they say Iran claims it shot down U.S. fighter jet as bounty placed on pilot. Again, these are claims coming in from Iran at this point. The U.S. has not officially confirmed any of this. Now, all of this comes as President Trump is saying Iran's bridges and electric power plants could be targeted next. The president writing that over on Truth Social very early this morning. Now, we're also getting some video that came in from the president on Truth Social. He posted this just yesterday, and I want to pop it up on your screen as it says the biggest bridge in Iran comes tumbling down, never to be used again. Much more to follow. It's time for Iran to make a deal before it's too late, and there is nothing left of what still could become a great country. Again, this is just some of that video posted by President Trump on Truth Social, showing the flames and, of course, the smoke there after that huge bridge was brought down by the U.S. Right now, there is a lot to discuss about all of this, so I do want to bring in a guest to talk about all of the different developments out of the Middle East. We have Vice Admiral Fawzi Miller, former commander of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here.
Thanks for having me.
And I do want to talk to you a little bit about what we're learning coming in out of Iran. Again, I've said it a few times, but it is a claim at this point. What do you make of that? And if that all is true, what does that say to you that they are offering a reward for the person's capture?
We still don't know if this report is accurate or not. But anytime we fly manned aircraft over hostile territory, there's an understanding that something could go wrong. It could be a mechanical failure. The Iranians could have shot the airplane down, and we have some aircrew on the ground that require rescuing. So we do everything we can to mitigate any kind of circumstances that would cause our airplanes to get shot down or to be lost over hostile territory. But it does occasionally happen. So we have procedures for that as well. One of the reasons the campaign plan that we see being executed was written and executed the way it is to avoid getting manned aircraft over hostile territory while there's still a robust air defense. But that doesn't mean, even though we've knocked down a lot of the air defenses, it doesn't mean we've gotten every missile, we've gotten every piece of anti-aircraft artillery that they have. But we have procedures, and there's a Joint Rescue Operations Center that stood up that's sole purpose is to rescue downed airmen, particularly in hostile territory. A lot of people have been asking what sort of things does the 31st MEU bring to the fight on the Tripoli. They just arrived in theater. The Marines have a mission to do the tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel. They're very good at it, as do the other services. So our crews are trained to be able to evade capture and be rescued. So all of that, if there are airmen on the ground right now, all of that is in work, and we're certainly trying to rescue them. It can't be a surprise to anyone that Iran offers a bounty on downed aircrew. That's not new. That was very prevalent in the days of the Vietnam War, where if someone got shot down over North Vietnam, the government would pay money to the citizens that turned that person in. But there's also underground operations. There's not any love in Iran for the regime, so it's quite possible these aircrew could find themselves in the hands of friendly Iranians that would help spirit them out of the country.
That's always a possibility. And I do want to show you some of this video again that was coming in from President Trump as he posted it on Truth Social, saying, of course, this morning that up next could be the bridges, the electric power plants that are targeted. As you look at this video here and essentially hear about the bridges that have been hit or could potentially be hit, what do you make of that overall and the goal? What is the message there that President Trump is trying to send to the Iranian regime?
I think the bombing of this particular bridge sends a couple of messages and does a couple of things. First message it sends is that it's going to be more difficult for the regime to move around inside the country, either to fight the Americans and the Israelis, or to command and control their troops, or to oppress their people, which is obviously one of the things that they do on a regular basis. So not having this particular bridge, which is a fairly important bridge in terms of land travel in Iran, is a blow to the regime's ability to both fight the war and to oppress its people. The other thing it does is it gives a message of some hope, I think, to the Iranian people. So a lot of the targets that we've taken out, and there's over 12,000 by the U.S. and almost as many by the Israelis, but they're military targets or industrial targets that are away from the populated areas. So the Iranian people know a war is going on, but they don't necessarily see it up close and personal. They don't see it affecting them, and they don't therefore see it affecting the regime. Well, this is a very visible signal that the regime is under attack and unable to defend very critical infrastructure.
Important to note that just a few months ago, we saw things kind of escalate as we started to see more and more of those protests that were taking place, not just in Tehran, but in smaller areas of Iran as well, against the current regime. Is it possible that we are going to see that happen again, or are the people there of Iran still a little nervous due to the executions, the public hangings that have taken place?
Well, although it's very difficult to get information out of Iran these days because the regime has the internet shut down, some information does, of course, get out, and what we're seeing is that people are against the regime, but they're not able to protest against the regime. One of the things I think we ought to think about is when we think about a revolution in Iran, we think of the 1979 revolution. We think about it really taking root and taking hold in Tehran and expanding outwards. If you go back in history to around the turn of the last century, so 1907 or so, the constitutional revolution in Iran, that came from the outside, from smaller cities and provinces, and Iran is only about 60% Persian, so there's quite a bit of ethnic dispersion around the country, and further away from Tehran you get, the more ethnic disparity that you actually have. And so it may be that because the IRGC, the Basij forces are concentrated in Tehran, it may be that we see this revolution come not from Tehran out, but from outside working its way in.
What signs are you looking for that maybe the actual conflict that's going on, the war itself, could be wrapping up? President Trump spoke to the nation, addressing them, all of us, in prime time earlier on this week, saying essentially that we may need 2 to 3 weeks. What signs specifically are you looking for that things are maybe coming to a close?
I think there's a couple things that we're looking for. We've had great success in the military campaign, but the work's not yet done, and it's important that that work gets done before the campaign concludes. One of the things that we continue to see is that Iran has the ability to send missiles all the way over to Israel, and they continue to do so on a daily basis, missiles and drones. And so we're going to need to continue to attract those capabilities, in particular the launchers. And they're down to somewhere in the neighborhood, I think, of about 100 launchers left to them. And so they've taken significant losses, but they still have that capability. And so we're going to want to continue to attract that. And the other thing, of course, that's of major importance is the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. And part of that is the ability of the Iranians to keep the strait closed. Part of it is the will of the Iranian regime to keep it closed. So can they command and control the forces? Can they actually attack ships that are sailing through the strait that don't have the prior approval of the regime? I think once we see those two things come into play, we'll see a conclusion of the hostilities.
Have you seen, just based on what we heard as all of this got underway with Operation Epic Fury just a little more than a month ago, have you seen any sort of change in the objectives overall of the mission, or have they kind of stayed the same as far as you're concerned?
Well, I'll talk about the military objectives because those have been clear right from the outset, and they've remained the same. And the reports that we get from Admiral Cooper and his team are based on the military objectives that he's been given to accomplish. And one of them was to destroy the Iranian nuclear weapons program. I think all of the nuclear weapons sites in Iran that we know of have either been destroyed or buried under a pile of rubble. And so I think we've been successful in that regard. We've seen a significant degradation in their ability to launch drones and their ability to launch cruise missiles or ballistic missiles, but that ability hasn't been diminished completely. So I think we're making progress in that regard. And then the last real military objective was to make sure that Iran wasn't a threat to its neighboring nations or other nations in the world, either by itself or through the use of proxies. And we see what's happening in Lebanon with regard to Hezbollah. We've seen what has happened around the rest of the world. The Houthis have been relatively quiet. They haven't stayed out completely, but they certainly haven't jumped all in. And so we're starting to see all of those military objectives be met, and with the exceptions that I mentioned earlier, which are the remaining ballistic missiles that they're able to launch against their neighbors and into Israel, and their ability to control the Strait of Hormuz.
And my last question here, one thing that we've also heard from Iran, again, all of these are claims. They are not confirmed by anyone. They're coming in from the IRGC and other Iranian leadership, so to speak, at this point. But they've claimed that they actually have stockpiles of weapons that are hidden very far underneath the earth there, essentially buried deep underground. So is that something that the U.S. takes seriously, or is the assumption there that at this point they're probably lying?
Well, there's an old saying in the region that when the regime speaks, you shouldn't listen to what they say. You should watch what they do, because they constantly lie. Could they have these hidden stockpiles? Certainly, that's the case. One of the things that's been clear during this campaign and in previous campaigns, we go back to the 12-day war, is the fact that the Iranians don't have. We have very good intelligence. And that's both intelligence that comes from the United States, but also intelligence that comes from Israel in terms of where the Iranians have hidden things. And so we've had great success in that regard. That doesn't mean there aren't more. But those stockpiles, if they're buried deeply underground, someplace far away, they've got to get at them. They've got to get them out. They've got to transport them. And I think they would find those things difficult things to do under a very watchful eye that we have over the entire country today.
All right, Fozzie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and helping to break it all down. We definitely appreciate it. Anything that you want to add, anything we missed? I know we covered a lot of ground there, but before I let you go.
Well, I think we ought to be awfully proud of our troops. If we have a couple of airmen on the ground that are in danger, then we certainly pray for their safe return.
All right, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, we continue to cover this breaking news that is coming into our newsroom at this point. We have very limited information, but essentially what we've been told here by Iranian state TV, again, this is a claim. They say today a U.S. pilot was ejected from an aircraft over southwestern Iran. The broadcaster going on to say, quote, "If you capture the enemy pilot or pilots alive and hand them over to the police, you will receive a precious prize," end quote. No word from the White House, the Pentagon, or U.S. Central Command as to the validity of that claim. But we are waiting on some of those responses here. We have reached out to the White House, the Associated Press, as far as Reuters, a lot of different agencies. So we will keep you posted here as we get additional details.